To thine own self be true. Funny, isn't it? A line so clean it almost sounds innocent. And still so many of you broke yourselves trying to be true to everybody else first. You lowered your voice to keep the peace. You swallowed your anger to keep the bond. You apologize for wounds you did not create because losing yourself felt less terrifying than losing them. You called it loyalty, patience, maturity, love. But some of it was fear dressed in beautiful clothing. Some of it was grief arriving early. You felt the relationship cracking, the friendship cooling, the family respect fading. And instead of asking, why am I shrinking here? You asked, how much more of me do I have to erase to make them stay? That is a brutal thing, to stand in front of someone you love and quietly begin negotiating your own disappearance. To become softer than your truth, smaller than your soul, calmer than your pain, easier to digest, easier to use, easier to leave. And the ugliest part is that some people will let you do it. Some will watch you bend, and instead of stopping you, they will admire how convenient your suffering makes them feel. So this is not a speech about them first. No, this is about the slow funeral of the self, about the terrible sadness of becoming agreeable enough to be loved and invisible enough to survive. When you lose yourself trying to keep them, you do not lose everything at once. You lose yourself in little permissions, one silence, one compromise, one swallowed truth at a time. First, it never starts with a dramatic collapse. No, that would be too merciful. It starts quietly, politely, almost nobly. A delayed opinion, a swallowed objection, a smile you put on because the room is tired and you do not want to become another burden inside it. You tell yourself, it's not a big deal. Then again, it's not worth arguing. Then again, maybe I'm overreacting. And just like that, your spirit begins to learn the shape of self-betrayal in the language of reason. A husband laughs at a joke that slices his dignity in front of guests because he does not want to embarrass his wife. A daughter nods through insults disguised as advice because elders must be respected, and she is terrified of sounding ungrateful. A friend keeps answering midnight calls, keeps fixing disasters, keeps giving time he cannot afford to lose because he is scared that the first boundary will sound like abandonment. That is how people fade, not in storms, in negotiations, in tiny private treaties signed against their own chest. And every time you betray your own feelings to preserve someone else's comfort, your inner voice becomes less certain, less trusted, less alive. You begin to feel tired in strange ways, not sleepy, not lazy, spirit tired, soul tired, like your own face does not fit right anymore. You become efficient at being tolerated, efficient at being easy, efficient at making sure nobody has to deal with the full truth of you. And then one day, One day you look around and realize the people you were trying so desperately to keep do not even know who they kept. Because you handed them edited versions, softened versions, harmless versions. So understand this. The first wound is not that they changed you. The first wound is that you helped them do it. One "it's fine" at a time. Second, some people do not fall in love with your soul. They fall in love with your adjustments, with how easily you forgive, with how quickly you calm down, with how much emotional labor you perform to keep the atmosphere soft around them. They like the version of you that absorbs impact without making noise. A man says he loves how understanding you are, but what he really loves is that you rarely force him to face himself. A friend says you are different from everybody else, but what he means is that other people eventually say no, and you kept saying yes long after your heart started shaking. A mother says, "You know how to keep this family together," and the sentence sounds honorable until you notice it always means you must be the one who stays silent, who apologizes first, who overlooks disrespect, who sacrifices your peace so the household can continue pretending it is healthy. That is not always love. Sometimes it is dependence on your damage. Whew, ugly sentence, isn't it? But true. Some people become very attached to the version of you that has no edges, the version that never interrupts the script. And when you start healing, when you become clearer, firmer, less apologetic, less endlessly available, they do not say, "I miss controlling you." No. They say, "You changed." Of course you changed. You stopped bleeding quietly. You stopped performing comfort while your insides were collapsing. That accusation, "You changed," has broken many hearts because it sounds like betrayal when really it may be the first evidence of life returning to you. Listen carefully. If your growth feels like cruelty to someone, it may be because they built their access around your weakness. Do not confuse being missed with being valued. Sometimes they miss the convenience, the compliance, the old doorway into you. Not you, not the real you, the unlocked version. Third, one of the saddest things a human being can do is begin competing with their own pain just to remain lovable. You know this shape. You know it too well. Someone hurts you, but you measure your wound against their mood before you speak. Someone disappoints you, but you wait for the right day, the gentle day, the easy day, the day they are rested enough to hear it. Then the day never comes, or worse, it comes and you ruin your own truth by presenting it with little cushions around it. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. I know you didn't mean it. It's okay, really. I just felt a little... Look at you, bleeding with manners. A wife cries in the bathroom and wipes her face before returning to the living room because she does not want him to think she is dramatic. A son gets mocked every family gathering and turns it into a joke before anyone else can, because humiliation feels easier when you volunteer for it first. A woman whose friend keeps dismissing her pain says, "You're right, it's not a big deal," then lies awake all night replaying the conversation, hating herself for needing depth in a shallow room. This is where self-loss becomes almost holy looking. It wears patience like a halo. It wears kindness like a bandage. But patience without truth can become cowardice, and kindness without boundaries can become self-erasure. There is nothing noble about turning your own suffering into background music so others can stay comfortable. The people who love you cleanly may not always understand you perfectly, but they should not require your silence to feel safe. They should not need you disfigured to stay affectionate. And if you keep shrinking your pain so they can keep their image of themselves, eventually even your tears will ask permission before falling. That is too high a price for belonging. Fourth, losing yourself does not only happen in love. No. Sometimes it happens in work, where your smile becomes part of the machinery. You become the dependable one, the agreeable one, the one who never pushes back too hard, the one who says, "Sure," when the task should have been shared, the one who absorbs the tension so the office can keep pretending the culture is healthy. A manager praises your attitude because your attitude saves him from dealing with his own poor planning. A colleague calls you solid because you make yourself available enough to cover his laziness. A team says they could not function without you, and it sounds flattering until you realize the compliment is chained to your exhaustion. You stay late. You answer messages early. You make yourself emotionally readable, professionally easy, endlessly useful. And when your body starts to resist, when your chest tightens, when your sleep turns thin, when Sunday evening begins to feel like grief, you do not ask, "Why is this costing me so much?" You ask, "How can I become better at enduring it?" Terrifying little question. Because the world often rewards self-abandonment before it destroys it. Promotions, praise, trust, dependency, status. All these things can gather around the person who forgets how to say enough. But understand the trap. Being needed is not the same as being respected. And being praised is not the same as being protected. I have seen people become legends in rooms that would never have lifted a finger if those same people collapsed. The office sends flowers. The boss says kind words. The group chat fills with concern. And then the work goes on. That should sober you. Do not offer your nervous system as a sacrifice to places that only know how to admire output. Watch who values your humanity when you are not producing. Watch who still treats you with dignity when you disappoint expectation. Watch who makes room for your limits without punishing you for having them. Because if the only version of you they can appreciate is the drained version that never stops giving, then they are not connected to your worth. They are connected to your function. Fifth, let us talk about family. Because that wound is complicated in a way romance never fully reaches. Strangers hurt you and your body recoils. Family hurts you and your body argues with itself. You love them. You owe them things. You remember their sacrifices. You remember the meals, the prayers, the rides, the years, the protection, the names, the history, the faces around the table. So when the damage comes from there, from those hands, those mouths, those expectations, it does not land like a clean injury. It lands like confusion. A father says he is only being hard on you because he wants strength, but his words carve shame so deep you begin doubting every ambition before it reaches daylight. A mother calls it concern, but her concern is always control wearing perfume, always a question with judgment hidden inside it, always love delivered through pressure. A brother mocks your sensitivity every chance he gets, then acts offended when you stop opening up. A family system appoints you the peacemaker, the patient one, the reasonable one, and then quietly feeds on your ability to absorb disrespect without exploding. And that role, the strong one, has buried many souls alive. Because the strong one rarely gets rescued. The strong one gets assigned more. You become the shock absorber of generations, the one who understands everybody, the one who forgives the elders, excuses the damaged, translates the rude, calms the childish, tolerates the unfair, and somehow still feels guilty for being tired. Listen to me. Respecting family does not require assisting in your own disappearance. Honoring ties does not mean lying about harm. Staying gentle does not mean staying untrue. Some of you learned to become tiny at home long before you ever became tiny in love. That is why certain disrespect feels familiar. That is why certain manipulations feel normal. That is why your body calls suffocation closeness. Because somewhere early, your nervous system confused belonging with self-erasure. And when that happens, you start believing peace is something you purchase with personality. No. Real peace cannot depend on you disappearing. If the family balance only survives when you swallow every truth, then the balance is false. If the love only feels warm when you are obedient, then the warmth is conditional. You can be respectful and still honest. You can be kind and still refuse distortion. You can protect the bond without sacrificing the self. But first you have to admit the wound. First you have to stop calling your own suffocation duty. Sixth, there comes a terrible stage in self-loss where you no longer even know whether your feelings are real or merely inconvenient. That is a haunted place. Because by then, you are not just hiding from others, you are hiding from yourself. Your own reactions begin to feel suspicious to you. You feel hurt and immediately launch an investigation against your own heart. Am I being unfair? Am I asking too much? Did I imagine that tone? Maybe they were tired. Maybe I should be more patient. Patience again, the favorite disguise of delayed truth. I am not mocking patience itself. No, patience is beautiful when it protects wisdom. It is tragic when it protects denial. And some of you have lived in denial so elegantly that nobody notices the ruin except your body. Your jaw stays tight. Your sleep becomes shallow. Your chest prepares for conversations before they happen. Your stomach changes when their name appears on your screen. Your back hardens in certain rooms. Your laughter becomes slightly too quick, too performative, too useful. That is the body speaking a truth the mouth has been trained to postpone. A woman tells herself her husband is just stressed, yet every evening she adjusts her face before he enters the room. A husband insists his wife is only blunt, only passionate, only intense, but he has started apologizing before even saying what he thinks. A son keeps saying, "That's just how my family jokes," while secretly dreading every gathering because the joke is always his dignity. A friend says, "He means well," and maybe he does. Maybe he does sometimes. But meaning well while repeatedly harming someone is not innocence. It is negligence with a charming face. The tragedy deepens when you become so accustomed to self-abandonment that genuine care starts feeling suspicious. Someone asks what you need, and you freeze. Someone says, "Take your time," and you wait for the hidden price. Someone respects your boundary, and you almost feel guilty for having one. Look at what survival did. It made tenderness feel unfamiliar and control feel normal. That should break your heart a little. But not break it into hopelessness. Break it into recognition. Because once you can see what happened, once you can finally say, "I was taught to mistrust myself so that I could remain manageable," something dangerous begins. Something holy even. You start returning. Not loudly at first, not dramatically. You return in tiny acts. You stop laughing at the joke that humiliates you. You answer more slowly when guilt tries to rush you. You let silence exist without rushing to fix it. You say, "No, that did hurt me," without decorating the sentence with 20 apologies. And oh, some people will hate that. They will call you cold, difficult, selfish, dramatic, changed. Changed? Yes. Yes, exactly. Because the old version was hemorrhaging. Understand this deeply. The return to self often looks like disrespect to those who benefited from your absence. That does not make your return wrong. It makes their comfort expensive. There is grief in this, real grief. You may lose certain versions of people when you stop losing yourself. You may discover that what held the bond together was your constant emotional discounting of your own worth. You may find that some relationships cannot survive truth because they were built upon your edits, your silences, your endurance. That is devastating, but do not call it failure. Call it revelation. Call it the first honest weather after years of indoor pretending. Seventh, there is a special cruelty in being loved only while you are useful. And many of you have mistaken that arrangement for devotion because usefulness can look so much like importance from a distance. They call you first. They trust you with problems. They lean on you. They open up to you. They rely on your memory, your discipline, your softness, your resources, your emotional intelligence, your ability to understand the unsaid. It feels intimate. It feels chosen. It feels like you matter. Until the day your usefulness weakens and you watch the temperature change with terrifying precision. You get sick and the calls become shorter. You become busy and their patience becomes thinner. You ask for reciprocity and suddenly your need feels complicated. You stop overextending and discover how many relationships were being fed by your exhaustion. A sister who always came to you in crisis stops checking on you once your advice is no longer instantly available. A friend who used to say, "You're one of the few people I can count on," becomes strangely absent when you finally need counting on yourself. A partner who adored your empathy begins calling you distant the moment you stop over-explaining, over-comforting, over-repairing every emotional rupture they create. This is where the heart gets humiliated. Not because people need each other. Need is human. But because some people learn your generosity the way a thief learns a neighborhood. Quietly, repeatedly, efficiently. They notice which door is unlocked, which guilt works fastest, which wounds make you easiest to manage, which words soften you, which silences panic you. And if you are not careful, you begin participating in your own depletion while calling it love. You become proud of how much you can carry, proud of how available you are, proud of how deeply you understand people who barely study you at all. That one hurts, doesn't it? To realize you knew their patterns, their childhood wounds, their fears, their rhythms, their stress tells, their shame, their hunger, their silence. And they barely knew the difference between your brave face and your breaking face, because they did not have to know. Your labor kept the illusion running. Some of you have been translated so poorly by the people you gave your best language to. Do not overlook that. The soul becomes ill when it is consistently used as a service and rarely approached as a mystery. To be needed for what you do is not the same as being cherished for who you are. To be praised for your reliability is not the same as being held with tenderness when you fall apart. Many users are affectionate. That is what makes them dangerous. They are warm while the access is open. They are grateful while the supply is flowing. They may even look loyal because their dependency makes them consistent for a while. But close the gate, delay the rescue, protect the time, lower the emotional budget. Watch. The truth clears its throat eventually. There it is. The annoyance, the passive distance, the offended little silences, the sudden claim that you have changed, the manufactured sadness, the subtle moral pressure. After all I've done for you. Translation, after all the access I had. And then comes the most dangerous temptation of all, guilt. You start feeling cruel for not continuing the arrangement. You start remembering their good days, their kind messages, their vulnerable moments, the times they did show up, and you think maybe you are being too harsh. Maybe you are abandoning them. Maybe real love should endure more. Careful. Real love can endure difficulty. It does not require your identity as payment. There is a difference between supporting someone and becoming the furniture of their comfort. One is mercy, the other is disappearance. Furniture. That ugly little image, you standing there like a beautiful emotional chair everybody rests on, and nobody thinks to ask whether the wood is splitting. And when the wood finally cracks, they look surprised. Surprised. As if endurance was your religion and not just your wound. So hear this without romance. If a connection weakens the moment you stop over-serving it, the connection was not sustained by mutual care. It was sustained by your over-functioning. Let that truth wound you cleanly, because a clean wound heals truer than a decorated lie. Eighth, the saddest prison is the one where you become skilled at making your pain look reasonable to the people causing it. Ah, yes, this is where the performance becomes art. You stop simply hiding pain, you begin curating it. You present it gently, elegantly, in digestible pieces. You remove the sharp edges so nobody feels accused. You dilute the truth so they can stay comfortable enough to accept a diluted version of your suffering. It's okay. I know you didn't mean it like that. I'm not upset, just a little tired. Maybe I misunderstood. I know you've been under pressure. Look at those sentences. Tender little coffins. Because each one buries a truer sentence underneath it. Yes, that humiliated me. Yes, you keep doing this. Yes, I am tired of being interpreted only when I am easy. Yes, I am afraid that if I speak plainly, your affection will punish me. That last one, there, that is the engine. Fear of punishment. Not always screaming punishment, sometimes cooler than that. Sometimes it is withdrawal, sometimes mockery, sometimes a long silence, sometimes a face that tells you you have ruined the mood, sometimes a sigh that makes your honesty feel expensive. A girl tells her closest friend she felt dismissed, and the friend goes icy for 2 days until she apologizes for being too much. A husband tells his wife he feels disrespected in public, and she laughs, says he is sensitive, and later becomes affectionate without ever addressing it, training him to accept comfort instead of clarity. A man finally tells his family he does not like the way they speak to him, and suddenly everyone acts wounded, as if truth itself committed the offense. This is how people become editors of their own pain, not because they are weak, because they are trying to preserve connection in rooms where truth has a cost. And connection, connection is a hungry thing. It can make a person betray themselves with angelic manners. Some of you have become masters of emotional diplomacy because directness once led to chaos. So now you anticipate reactions, manage other people's guilt, soften your tone, schedule your honesty, and then wonder why speaking the truth feels exhausting before the conversation even begins. Because you are not just speaking, you are carrying the entire emotional architecture of the room on your back. You are timing, adjusting, cushioning, predicting, de-escalating, translating, preparing exits, preparing apologies, preparing backup explanations. No wonder your soul feels old. That oldness, that strange private age in your chest, often comes from years of overmanaging other people's reactions to your existence. And then, this part is cruel. You begin envying simple people. People who say what they feel without spending 2 hours building a moral shelter around the sentence. People who can disappoint someone and still sleep. People who can leave a room without carrying every face home in their nervous system. You envy them because they look free, and freedom has become emotionally expensive to you. But listen to me carefully. Your carefulness may have helped you survive, but survival techniques become prisons when they are never re-examined. You cannot keep making your truth small enough for everybody else's ego and still expect to feel alive inside your own body. The return to self in this stage is subtle and terrifying. It sounds like cleaner sentences, fewer disclaimers, less apologizing for reality. That hurt me. I do not agree. I am not available for that. I need space. Such simple words, such dangerous words in the wrong room. Dangerous not because they are evil, but because they expose who only loved your diplomacy. When the sentence loses its sugar, the relationship reveals its metabolism. Can it digest truth? Can it survive a boundary? Can it stay warm when it is no longer being carefully protected from itself? If not, then let the revelation be painful, yes, but not confusing. You were not born to turn your suffering into a polite memo. You were not born to make harm easier for its owner to hear. Some truths deserve a steady voice and no cushion at all. Ninth, there is a point where self-loss begins to corrupt memory itself. You stop remembering events as they happened and start remembering them as they were justified to you afterward. That is frightening, because once a person becomes fluent in explaining away their own pain, reality grows foggy around them. The insult becomes a stressful moment. The betrayal becomes a misunderstanding. The humiliation becomes, they didn't mean it like that. The pattern becomes, everybody has flaws. Everybody has flaws, yes. But not every flaw asks you to disappear so it can remain comfortable. A man remembers 10 years of being interrupted, corrected, belittled, and overshadowed in public as though it were just his wife's strong personality, because admitting the truth would force him to grieve a marriage he spent his youth defending. A woman remembers years of inconsistent affection as though it were simply bad timing, because if she names the pattern honestly, she has to face how much hope was wasted keeping a door open for someone who loved entrances more than presence. A son remembers being shamed into obedience as discipline because calling it what it was would shake the image of the people he needed to feel safe around. That is why healing often hurts memory first. You start seeing old scenes differently. The joke at the table was not harmless. The apology was not sincere, only efficient. The help was not generous, it was transactional. The concern was not concern, it was surveillance in a warm coat. And when the eyes finally open, grief comes in waves. Not just grief for what they did, grief for what you called it. Grief for how much intelligence you spent protecting the story instead of protecting the self. Grief for the years you confused endurance with love. Some of you are carrying sorrow older than your current relationships. You learned early that peace in the room mattered more than truth in your chest. So later in life, when someone demanded your silence, your body recognized the rule instantly. When someone rewarded your self-erasure with warmth, your nervous system thought, "Ah, yes, this is how affection works." Brutal little inheritance. It is possible to inherit emotional choreography without ever seeing it written down. Who apologizes first? Who keeps the family image polished? Who absorbs tension? Who gets to be moody? Who gets to be fragile? Who must be gracious? Who becomes the emotional janitor after every explosion? And if you were assigned the role of smoother, fixer, calmer, peacemaker, strong one, understanding one, then losing yourself may have felt less like a tragedy and more like a job description. That should anger you a little. Not into sin, not into cruelty, into clarity. Because anger, when clean, is often just the soul refusing another dishonest arrangement. A clean anger says, "I will not keep lying about what this costs me." A clean anger says, "I refuse to make a home inside explanations that bury me." A clean anger says, "Just because I understand your wounds does not mean I consent to being wounded by them forever." Forever. People love that word when they are spending your life instead of theirs. But the recovery of memory is sacred. To look back and say, "No, that was not okay. No, that did shape me. No, I was not too sensitive. I was underfed emotionally and overtrained in adaptation." That kind of truth is terrifying because it rearranges loyalty. Suddenly, you are no longer loyal to the version of the story that kept everyone else innocent. You become loyal to the reality of your own experience. And the moment you do that, certain people may start fighting your memory. Let them. Some people need you confused because your clarity invoices them. But your soul has paid enough interest already. Tenth, the return to self is not glamorous. I wish it were. I wish it looked like one beautiful speech, one honest confrontation, one clean goodbye, one sunrise, one prayer, one decisive moment where your spine straightens and the whole world finally understands. It rarely happens that way. More often it looks awkward, shaky, unattractive, inconvenient. It looks like pausing before answering because you are trying to hear yourself for once. It looks like disappointing someone you trained to expect immediate access. It looks like guilt after a healthy boundary because your old identity was built around never causing friction. A woman finally stops over-explaining and then spends the whole night wondering whether she was cruel. A husband says no to one unreasonable demand and then walks around the house feeling like a criminal. A son declines one family obligation because he is exhausted, and his chest fills with panic as though rest itself were disrespect. That panic does not always mean you are wrong. Sometimes it simply means your nervous system is passing through unfamiliar honesty. The body often reacts to freedom as if it were danger when captivity has been normal for too long. So when you begin returning to yourself, do not worship comfort as proof. Comfort may lie. Temporary discomfort can be the sound of old chains protesting. And yes, there will be grief. You will grieve the people who only knew the edited you. You will grieve the years spent overperforming softness. You will grieve the tenderness you handed to those who handled it carelessly. You may even grieve your own former self, the self that tolerated everything and called it depth, the self that knew how to survive every room by turning sincerity into strategy. Be gentle there. Do not hate that version of you. That version was trying to keep you connected in the only language it knew. Thank it, then outgrow it. Because survival identities are sacred for a season and suffocating after it. Another hard truth. When you start acting like a person with a self, some people will perform pain so convincingly that you will question your recovery. They will sound abandoned, betrayed, shocked. They will speak the language of love while describing the death of their access. Listen carefully to what exactly they are mourning. Is it your soul or your availability? Is it the relationship or the arrangement? People rarely confess that they preferred you without edges. They will make you decoded from tone, timing, withdrawal, guilt, little comments, selective warmth. But by now you should know how to read behavior. And if you must choose between disappointing an expectation and disappearing from your own life again, choose disappointment. Choose the awkward boundary. Choose the slower reply. Choose the honest answer that trembles. Choose the silence that does not rescue everyone. Choose the version of mercy that includes you. I am not telling you to become hard-hearted. No, stay kind, stay principled, stay dignified, stay clean. But stop confusing self-neglect with goodness. Stop confusing unlimited access with loyalty. Stop confusing being drained with being devoted. The road back to yourself may not look dramatic enough for the movies, but it is sacred work all the same. Sometimes the holiest thing a wounded person can do is stop volunteering for roles that require their own absence. Once you begin returning, you will notice something almost cruel in its simplicity. Many people never met you. They met your adaptation. They met the diplomatic version, the useful version, the forgiving version, the careful version, the version that spoke in soft circles around hard truths, the version that could be leaned on without asking too much back. They met your coping strategy and called it your personality. That realization can make a grown person cry in private. Not because it is dramatic, but because it is humiliating in such a quiet way. To understand that your niceness was partly fear, that your patience was partly self-protection, that your agreeableness was sometimes a passport stamped by childhood, family systems, old wounds, and unanswered hunger. To understand that people praised the very traits that were slowly deleting you. You're so easy to talk to. You never make things difficult. You're always there. You understand me better than anyone. Beautiful compliments. Dangerous compliments, when they are only true because you keep abandoning yourself to qualify for them. Because what happens when you are no longer easy in the old way? When you still listen, still care, still show up with dignity, but you stop making yourself emotionally cheap. The room changes. The same people who admired your understanding may become irritated by your discernment. The same people who loved your softness may recoil from your standards. The same people who trusted your loyalty may not know what to do with your honesty. And then comes the loneliest phase. The phase where you cannot go back, but you are not yet surrounded by people who know how to love the returned version of you. Ah, yes, that corridor. That painful, echoing corridor between self-betrayal and true belonging. In that corridor, you may feel selfish, exposed, unromantic, less magical, less lovable. You may miss being needed because needed felt like proof. You may miss being the rescuer because rescuers rarely have to sit with their own unmet needs for long. You may miss the old roles simply because they were familiar, and familiarity can mimic safety even when it is wounding. That is where many people relapse into their own erasure. They cannot bear the loneliness of becoming honest, so they return to performing usefulness, return to over-explaining, return to cushioning, return to saying yes too fast, return to proving that they are still worthy to rooms that only ever loved their labor. Enough. Worth is not something you earn by becoming easier to consume. Love is not proven by your ability to remain available through disrespect. Loyalty is not measured by how well you endure emotional malnutrition without complaint. Some of you have starved with grace, starved with manners, starved with such polished devotion that nobody noticed the famine but heaven and your own bones. Let that end. Let the old theater close. Let the audience be confused. Let the people who only applauded your self-erasure call the new you strange. Strange is fine. Strange may just mean alive in a room that preferred you edited. The mature soul does not become cruel when it returns to itself. It becomes legible, calm, steady, less available for false intimacy, less impressed by urgency, less seduced by guilt, more faithful to truth, more careful with access, more honest about cost. And eventually, listen, eventually, the right people will not need your disappearance to feel loved. They will not require your pain to stay hidden, your time to stay open, your boundaries to stay negotiable. They will know how to meet a whole person, not just a useful one. Until then, keep returning, even if your voice shakes, even if the room misreads you, even if your own heart trembles at the unfamiliar sound of your truth. Trembling truth is still truer than polished self-betrayal. So here you are, not at the end of a relationship only, or a friendship only, or a family wound only, but at the edge of a harder question. What exactly have you been willing to trade to avoid being left? Your sleep? Your honesty? Your appetite? Your natural laughter? Your anger? Your standards? Your timing? Your worship? Your peace? Your face in the mirror? Some of you traded your voice. Some traded your boundaries. Some traded your right to be difficult for 5 honest minutes. Some traded your own witness. You stopped even believing your inner alarm unless somebody else approved it first. And the tragedy is not only that they took so much, the tragedy is that you learned to call the transaction love. Love. Such a soft word for so many private funerals. But hear me now, with whatever part of you is still awake beneath all that adaptation. Losing yourself will never secure what is truly meant to remain. At best, it prolongs an arrangement. At best, it buys applause from people who preferred your silence. At best, it preserves a connection that can only survive by feeding on your edits. That is not peace. That is rented affection. And rented affection always comes with hidden debt. One day the bill arrives, in your body, in your sleep, in your bitterness, in your numbness, in that strange, exhausted sadness that sits on your chest when the phone lights up with their name and you cannot even explain why. Because somewhere inside, the soul keeps score, quietly, accurately, without performance. A soul can endure a lot. It can survive betrayal, loneliness, misunderstanding, seasons of hunger, rooms full of people who only know how to take. But when a soul is repeatedly instructed to betray itself for the comfort of others, something sacred begins to dim. Not die, no. Sacred things do not die so easily. But they do go silent. They do retreat. They do wait. And maybe that is why you have felt so tired. Not because life is hard only. Life is hard for everyone. You are tired because you have been carrying people in ways that required leaving yourself behind at the doorway. You are tired because your mercy had no lock. You are tired because you kept trying to make hard hearts feel safe, while your own heart kept bleeding in a corner with excellent manners. Excellent manners. What a sad way to disappear. So let this be the point where your sadness becomes clean enough to guide you instead of drown you. Not noisy sadness, not dramatic sadness, clean sadness. The kind that says, I finally see what this has cost me. The kind that makes you stop chasing explanations from people who benefited from your confusion. The kind that makes you stop asking whether you are allowed to protect what Allah entrusted you with inside your own chest. You are. You are allowed to become less reachable where you were only being consumed. You are allowed to let silence answer manipulations that once pulled entire speeches out of you. You are allowed to disappoint appetites that mistook your generosity for public property. You are allowed to pray, think, breathe, heal, and move more slowly than guilt demands. And you are allowed, yes, allowed, to stop auditioning for love by proving how much pain you can survive without changing your face. Enough of that theater. Enough of smiling while shrinking. Enough of explaining while erasing. Enough of calling your own collapse patience. Enough of being the soft place everyone lands while nobody learns how to hold you with equal care. Enough. But do not become cruel now. Do not become what hurt you. Do not worship coldness because warmth was mishandled. Stay principled. Stay clean. Stay truthful. Stay awake. Let your heart remain soft before its Lord and wise before people. Let your kindness become structured. Let your mercy become discerning. Let your presence become earned, not endlessly available. And if someone says you changed, let them. If someone says you are harder to reach, let them. If someone mourns the version of you that never protected itself, let them mourn. That person kept everybody else warm and left you out in the cold. The returned version may shake when it speaks, may grieve when it leaves, may cry after setting one honest boundary, may feel lonely in the corridor between old roles and true belonging. But it is real. Real. And reality, even when trembling, is a kinder place to live than a lie that smiles while it suffocates you. So when you lose yourself trying to keep them, do not ask only how to keep them. Ask the harder, holier question. Who have I been abandoning to do it? When the answer finally comes, bring that person home.